Okay, guys. Well, welcome to our where are we? April Zoomcast.
Yeah.
It's the painful truth about opening your clinic. And so obviously most of our audience is going to be startups, and we love at Meg to work with the startups. I mean, we've seen a ton of influx of startups, especially within the last year. And, there's nothing more like heartwarming and exciting than sharing that startup experience with our Meg clients. So we're super excited about this Zoomcast in particular today. And we have an excellent panel here. And I'm just going to go ahead and introduce our panelists. So we have Mr. Brian J. Gallagher himself, the man, the myth, the legend, as Kim said. He loves it when I say that.
Stop it.
Who is the founder of Meg. We also have Kim Carpenter, who is one of our Meg clients and owner of Specialty Physical Therapy. And then we have Christa Tusha, who I will tell you, she is the brains behind the operation, the genius. And honestly, guys, she has helped me a ton with building the stack grids that we have available to our clients. So she is super, super smart with her numbers and our accountant here at Meg. So we're really excited to have her on as a panelist as well. So you can see all the kind of work she does in the background.
Yeah. Hey, Nicole, you know how you want to challenge somebody with a more difficult Rubik's Cube? I always want to challenge Christa with a more difficult spreadsheet, but every single time there's not a spreadsheet she can't crack. She's just like,
yeah. So she is my go-to for any of those problems I can't figure out. So very, very valuable resource for us. So today we are going to cover some of the key phases in the startup process. So we'll talk a little bit about how we can break it down in Meg Academy. We're also going to talk about some of the common pitfalls that we often hear from clients that we're going to try and help you navigate. And then we're going to talk accounting 101. So Christa is really going to take over the section, and we're going to kind of dive into the finances a little bit, in particular relating to the startup. And then obviously we'll hear from Kim, who is our successful opening during COVID startup, which, you can be successful last year, then you can pretty much tackle anything. So we're really proud of her for that. So we're going to hear a little bit from her as well. In terms of resources, we certainly have our resource guide for optimizing your clinic. Please take advantage of that resource. It has a lot of great information in there, including credentialing and how to negotiate contracts. And we also have our startup link that we're going to put in here. If you are a startup and you want to learn more information, please hit up that link. And then we will talk about this later too, and we'll put this up again later. But if you are looking to outsource your bookkeeping, please check out Paro. So Matthew's going to throw up that link, and again, we'll revisit it again when we talk to Christa. So the next Zoomcast we will be doing in May, so stay tuned for that. But let's kind of dive right into our conversation right now. And Brian, I want you to help shed a little light on, obviously you were a part of the development of Meg Academy, but we've done a very big revamp in the last, I don't know, what was it, 3 months ago that we launched Meg 4.0.
Right.
So we've really kind of created this step-by-step process. So why is it so important to take this approach when, doing a startup?
Well, I think, for those of you who are listening, and if you just think about what a lot of people are gravitating toward today, and Nicole, you and I have had this conversation, everyone's looking for a system, a program, a protocol. People are looking to simplify their lives, and rightly so, because the world has gone kind of upside down. And so as it gets more and more convoluted, more and more unpredictable, people are looking for greater degrees of certainty, right? Because when you have less variability, you have less randomity, if you will, things in motion, you can move forward with greater confidence. Because one thing that we do know for sure, and we have seen this, and it's just a cultural thing, it's like inside the human DNA. When you're trying to accomplish anything in your life and you have a degree of uncertainty or a degree of mystery involved in it, the human reaction to that is to stay put. It's not to move forward because it's too dangerous, because you're not quite sure what the outcome is going to be. You're not sure what's going to happen there. So you're going to default back to what you were last doing well at. How many owners, how many PTs out there listening have we seen? And when their business gets into trouble, or when their things start to get, difficult and challenging for them, where do we find them? We find them in the treatment room. We find them next to the treatment table. And what are they? They're just treating like crazy, because they
Safe
know
zone.
they can do that very, very well. So what we did was, over the years of our evolution, and that's what I really love about this, having our school teacher on board, having Nicole on board, and her degree of detailed organizational anal retentiveness, it really allows us to continue to evolve our program so that it tightens down and tightens down and tightens down, becomes more and more of that program, that protocol, that step-by-step process. But yet it allows for the degree of variability to, depending on where you are in the country, because California is not Pennsylvania. So we have to be nimble, and we have to react to those smaller markets, larger markets, mid-sized markets. And then South Dakota, where Christa is, we don't even know what to call that market. But that is what we've gone to, and that's where I'm at with the startup program. And Nicole's done a fantastic job of loading up that file vault, putting it in there, so that if you are looking to change your life and you are looking to bridge that gap from being a therapist, being an employee, to being an owner, we're going to take you by the hand and we're going to walk you through this process shoulder to shoulder, so you don't run into that mystery pitfall, so you don't get into that degree of confusion, and you don't wonder, what am I supposed to be doing next? You're going to have this clear recipe so that cake comes out correct every single time. And one of our claim to fame, as everyone's heard us say, is we've never had a startup fail, going all the way back to when we started this in 2006. And we're not about to let you be our first one. Anyway.
And there's always a certain level of anxiety when you're taking on this endeavor. And there's also a certain degree of overwhelm, and if you just look at this as like, oh my gosh, I have credentialing, I'm marketing, where do I even start? Breaking it up into the phases, as we did, and whether you go with our program or you're following a different program, if you can break it up into phases, and we chose to break it up into 4 phases. So the first phase is going to be your startup logistics. So that's like, you're getting incorporated, and, the startup logistics is what we would call them. The second phase is it takes sometimes a big chunk of time, but that is really finding the right environment. And we've created an entire market analysis that you have to go through in order to really select the right location, because that's where it all starts, right? If you can choose the right environment, then you can really flourish and be successful. That's our first key to business success. So you really have to get that honed down and narrow down. And with environment, it comes your equipment, and the layout of your physical space, and the build out, and things of that nature. So that's really kind of all encompassed in phase 2. Phase 3 is like legal compliance, and we have a very detailed out compliance program that we highly recommend. We've done it in conjunction with a third party, Daniel Hirsch, in making sure that you're doing things correctly and staying kind of within the lines, getting the right documentation, things of that nature. And then, phase 4 is going to be preparing for that open. So, when do I start my website? How do I market to doctors? When do I quit my job and, really go all in? So, that's really where we kind of cover that level of detail and kind of map out where you should be with a Gantt chart, so that kind of relatively the amount of time. Now, as you might know, and Kim, you can attest to this, there's different timelines for everybody. And I'd love to hear from you a little bit about your experience. If you can kind of jump in, and you came in to Meg Academy before we did this revamp, but if you can kind of share, how the support was, that would be helpful for our listeners.
Yeah, when I started, and my story is very much like a lot of the listeners, it was basically I just got sick of corporate healthcare and all that. And so when I called Meg and I said, I need to change this, then from the very start, I was led through this whole process of, well, this is how you start and this is how you do it. And I knew it was exactly what I needed. So I just signed on, and it was exactly what I needed. It's like basically when you get some product and it comes with a manual, this is how to do it. That's what I got exactly. And the whole process, when you guys talk about you've never had a startup that failed, I can understand why, because everything is laid out. And I needed that. I had been a great clinician. I had been a great manager, but I had not been an owner. So I needed to learn all that. So I had that training as I was going through all the steps of, this is what you do now. This is what you do now. This is what you do now. And then Nicole, you were my coach. So then I was constantly emailing you. And the great thing about Meg is it's a team. So when Nicole, you didn't know the answer, you would talk to Brian, you would talk to the billing component, whoever you had to talk to, and you would find the answers for me, and they would call me, and you'd make introductions to me to the other people I would need. And I mean, you guys just basically held my hand through the whole entire thing. And what I didn't learn on I can't think of anything I didn't learn, but if there's any questions outside of the materials I was learning through Meg Academy, and the file the file vault is like amazing, in correlation that you would answer all those questions. And I know, Brian, you did so many things for me personally. Like, I sent you the build out and I said, what do you think of this build out? And you actually went over the build out and told me how I could change it. And then I sent you a copy of the final lease, and you went through the whole entire lease, and you say, I would recommend changing this and this and this. And I willingly did it.
That's so great. It's so funny. Earlier on, I've been hung up on something you said. You said, even when you ask Nicole questions and she didn't know the answer, really? Is that really? I'm hung up on that one.
You give him a little crack in the door. He's gonna
I'm sorry, Nicole. I didn't mean to throw you under the bus.
I'm sorry. I got stuck on hello. I got stuck on that. I was, wait a minute. What happened?
Lordy,
so, well, that's great, Kim. I'm so glad. And it's so funny. Like, when we first met, I was on vacation, and I remember taking the call, and I was sitting out on the porch of my, I think we were like in a bed and breakfast or something like that. And I was talking to you, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is like the heartland of America. We have to do business. I want to definitely work with you to like launch this in your area. And it's really good to see how well you've applied. And, the thing that you brought to the table is the owner mindset. I think that's the most beautiful thing. Logistics are great. And like you said about the file vault, I often tell people, and you just don't know till you experience it sometimes. But I say the file vault alone is worth whatever you paid to get in. I swear to you, it's my whole life's work, everything we've ever built. And then Nicole has perfected its every detail. So I'm really glad to hear you acknowledge that, because that's really such a powerful tool just in itself. It's a powerful tool.
Yeah. And one of the other things that, whatever you choose to do, be a part of a community, because I think one of the biggest benefits is being able to network with hundreds of owners that are going through their own different, unique little situations, but you can draw from them as well. And we have such an amazing community here at Meg that, people are so willing to share their experiences, like yourself, Kim, coming on here and just sharing what you have gone through is so beneficial to somebody else who's just getting started. So, aligning yourself with that type of network becomes really important, because it just becomes that much more, your knowledge base is going to expand that much more, and your creativity is going to expand that much more.
And Kim, I'll ask you this question. Did you feel, Nicole and I are doing practice assessments week in and week out. And I feel from the calls, that the hundreds, maybe thousands of calls we've taken right now, that most of them are directed toward the things that we just didn't get in PT school: contracting, credentialing, billing, getting the financing to start my practice. What's the legalities of what I can do with cash-based businesses, services versus non-cash-based service? All these. Would you say that was very much like your hang up? Like, when you were an employee, you knew the PT stuff. It's not like you're going to crack a book and go, what am I going to do with that bank card surgery? But it's the other things, right?
For sure. The things, even as a manager, like a manager over, people on PT, OT, speech, whatever, I never learned this level of information. And so I was really at level 0, and I had to learn it all. And it was there. You guys had it all there for me. I was able to negotiate contracts. And as you guys have talked, we've talked before, I'm a really good negotiator. So when I had to say, well, how do I talk to the insurance company? How do I set up these contracts? And So I was able to do that. You guys had all that information. So like in school, no, we got none of it. But with your program, I got all of it. I got everything I needed. The letters that I would send to the insurance company that I could just change according to what I needed them to, like, just tweak them. But I remember saying to you guys, like, am I allowed to copy this?
I remember that.
Yeah, it's yours.
In school, we learn you can't copy anything. And I'm like, so you mean I just put my own logo on the top of this policy procedure? It blew my mind because it's exactly nothing I learned at school.
Yeah.
This is all new stuff. And it was the way you take it through, like the Gantt chart. Oh my gosh, the Gantt chart alone is worth the money to say, this is what you do and when, you know, and it's amazing.
What you do and when, and what I like about a Gantt chart, it tells you how much time you should spend on that step, right? So you don't fall behind. I'm going to throw Matthew for a tailspin here. Matthew, if you could just pull up the podcast that I did and post it here for everybody. The podcast I did on contracting, on how to properly go about negotiating a contract. I did a podcast where I tabulated all of the research on what does the insurance company think about you when you're asking for more money and what's their argument against it. Because I feel like the best offense is a good defense, right? So if Matthew could pull up that podcast, I think it's like podcast 150 or something like that, 151, but put it up there. I would think everybody should listen to it. It's a great thing to take advantage of. So,
and as I mentioned, it is in the resource guide that Matthew has been putting up the link to. So there
that
is
podcast?
some tips. No, not the podcast, but the tips. You go through it, in that resource guide. So, and then, Kim, you were a huge success on that. I know you were able to negotiate those rates up.
So people are talking about like spending a certain amount of money. Well, that one tip alone, I took the amount that I was getting from a particular insurance company by 20%. I mean, that alone over a year's time is going to pay for what you need for this. It's
That's awesome. I'm so happy to hear that. And I do want to talk a little bit about stay on that finance topic because we do have a great brain to pick over here in Christa. I know we get a lot of questions about, again, we don't get this in PT school. How do I set up payroll? Like, what do I need to know about the numbers? So Christa, I would love for you to take a few minutes to kind of cover, high level, very basic overview of what a startup owner will need to know about, accounting 101.
Okay. It's so strange to me being a accounting major, and that's what I've done for 30 years now, but that no one tells you how to maybe look at what you should be looking at for a financial. That's just kind of crazy to me because that's just shoved down our throats when I was in school. So anyway, mainly the two biggest things that you're going to want to focus on once you get up and running is your balance sheet and your income statement. Now, sometimes an income statement is referred to as a profit and loss. It's the exact same thing. Some people call it a profit and loss statement. Some people call it an income statement. They mean the same thing. It's just different wording. So I don't know, Matthew, if we were going to put these up too as a link, just kind of as a guide for people or what, but the income statement essentially just tells you what you're making for whatever period of time. So it compares what you have for revenue. It takes out your expenses to get what your net profit is. That's all an income statement is. You can make it as detailed as you want. You can make it as high level as you want. This is just kind of an example showing that you have this much in revenue. And then these are just kind of some major categories for expenses, your rent, your office supplies, marketing, payroll, utilities. And then if you have a little interest, if you had to do a startup loan, any of that kind of thing, to get what your net profit is for the month. Now, one thing about payroll, I know Nicole wanted me to mention this, is there's sometimes some confusion between what is a W-2 employee and what is a 1099 employee. Legally and technically, if they are in your office using your things, doing work for you directly in your physical location, they have to be a W-2 employee. A 1099 employee is considered more to be a consultant. So if you have to hire a marketing company to come and do some marketing for you. You can call that marketing expense. If they're an individual, you could send them a 1099. So if they are a staff member, they should be considered a W-2 employee. You have to pay payroll taxes on them. You have to report them for unemployment, all of those kinds of things. A balance sheet then is kind of really what your banker is going to be interested in at the end of every year. Because the balance sheet says, okay, I started with this dollar amount of cash. All of my revenue and expenses fed into that, and it left me with an ending dollar amount in cash. Your balance sheet essentially shows what you own versus what you owe. So things that you own are your bank account, your accounts receivable, your equipment that is in your facility. All of that stuff is your assets. So that is what you own. That's the part of the balance sheet of what you own. Your liabilities then are what you owe to people. So did you take out a loan for the startup of your business? Did you take out a loan for some equipment purchases? That kind of thing. That's going to be in your liability section. And then all of the information from your income statement or P&L, however you refer to it, that actually comes through to your balance sheet in your retained earnings. That's what that number is. So if you can see that the net profit on the income statement equals the retained earnings on your balance sheet, that then tells the bank, okay, they made this much money in their business, so they owe this much, own this much, they owe that much, and they brought in this much cash. Yes, Brian.
Perfect. I'm curious. I always get a little confused. If I took a draw on my line of credit of $10,000, my bank account, checking account is up by $10,000, but my liabilities have grown by $10,000.
Correct.
Does it get reflected in both?
Yes. The general equation for a balance sheet is your assets have to equal your liabilities and your capital.
Oh. Yeah.
So,
Truth be told, balance sheets are the weakest point of knowledge in my entire business career.
You have a weak point?
I can't believe it.
Oh my goodness.
I'll tell you, I've always looked at the balance sheets and I'm like, I'll let the accountant just talk about that one, because income and expense statements and P&Ls, I'm all over that. But balance sheets, it's like, I don't know about
Brian,
that.
I didn't think you had an Achilles.
And now that I found it, man,
I'm telling you, I'm humble, boy. I when you talk balance sheets, I try not to gloss over because I'm like, oh. But
the balance sheet is really what your bank is going to ask for at the end of every year. If you have an operating loan or anything like that, because that is the true snapshot of your company. If you get too leveraged for what you have for ownership, you're going to get denied for a loan and things like that.
And what's too leveraged?
Having too much debt.
Too much debt. What would be too much debt?
Compared to your assets.
What do you think would be dangerous?
I'm sorry.
What do you think would be a dangerous number for that? What do you think somebody's going to they're going to frown on? If you have an asset value of 100,000, but your liabilities is 200, I mean, that's double your assets, right? I mean, that's...
Right. Yeah. Anything over 2 to 1 is considered kind of a danger area.
Okay, good.
There's all kinds of different things that play into that, and it kind of depends on what your business is.
Sure.
But yes, you definitely do not want at the end of the day, more liabilities than assets, right?
For sure. And I just think our audience wants to know, like, okay, give me some parameters, give me some things to think with, right? So 2 to 1 would be pretty standard rule of you want to stay below that.
Correct.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yes.
And I do have a comment on the 1099 versus W-2. You know, Kimberly, you and I have probably experienced at some point in times where, you know, even in your work history prior to opening up, right, where therapists will roam in, and Nicole knows this too, because Nicole's done everything from chicken egg collecting to physical therapy to everything. And when she would, you know, or therapists would come aboard, they say, well, I want to be a 1099. I work for the nursing home. I work home health, and I want to work 3 days a week here. So that's okay. And anybody here on the panel can correct me. I can hire you as a 1099. You do show that you are a contractor working for multiple places. Number 1, check that box. Number 2, though, if I bring you in as a 1099, you do not have to abide by the policies and procedures. You do not have to come to staff meetings. You do not have to wear the uniform, and I do not schedule for you. Now, if you're putting somebody in a uniform, scheduling for them, abiding by policies and procedures, they're not a 1099 person. Does anybody else have anything to add to that? Because I think that's a confusion for a lot of owners.
Yeah. And I don't think you can hold them accountable to the stats. You can't hold them accountable.
Nope.
To the
They're coming and it's kind of like Nicole's chicken egg story when she would work on the farms. You go in, you pick the eggs, and then you go to the next farm, and whatever you get, you get. You don't get to control them necessarily. So you can't double dip. You've seen that in your past too,
Christa is literally
Kimberly, right?
having someone collect chicken eggs on her farm for real.
That's true. That is happening right now, actually.
Actually, no, because chickens freak me out. There are no chickens on my farm.
That's great. But Kimberly, you get what I'm talking about, right? Like therapists will come in and they'll say it.
It's too much to me. Just starting out. I'm really following the plan that you set out, and you basically say, this is when you hire this person. This is when you hire this person, and it's just smart to do that. From like, don't reinvent the wheel. And so we're not really into the hiring the 1099 employees. We're just not at that point. So
right. Yeah. Good for you. Yeah. Good for you. And what you're referring to is what we have called a complement. And it says, based on this number of visits, you should have this number of staff. And based on the staff, it should be this number of clinicians, this number of admin. So you grow in what's called a complement, the proper admin to clinician ratio. So your payroll doesn't get admin heavy. And that's a saving grace, because as Christa will tell you, and we'll kick this back to Christa, the greatest thing in your liabilities, I guess, I don't know, balance sheet, I hate balance sheet, but the greatest thing in your expenses is your payroll. So I guess, Christa, I caught myself there. Your payroll expenses will show up on the income and expense statement, but they don't necessarily show up on the balance sheet.
No, because in total, your income statement feeds to your balance sheet.
Yeah, whatever. Okay.
Whatever.
Thank God we have Christa.
Yeah, that's right. Continue. I'm just going to mute myself.
Payroll for any business, any industry is probably the highest expense.
Yeah.
So don't freak. You'll kind of even see that's
especially if you hire Nicole
that way on my example. Payroll is just very, that's what runs your company.
Right.
So that is going to be your largest expense.
So Christa, do you recommend keeping that in-house and doing yourself as an owner, or do you recommend outsourcing? Like, do you recommend purchasing QuickBooks, or what do you think is best, advice for our startups?
That's a good question.
I think, in my opinion, for a startup, unless you have somebody that is willing to come for a few hours a week and do your bookkeeping or things like that, I mean, obviously there's 10 answers for that question, but if you don't trust somebody to look at your financial data and pay your bills properly and make sure your staff is paid and all of those things, I would definitely look into outsourcing. There's a really, really good company. It's called Paro. I actually came to Meg through Paro. So I know the company really well. I am 100% comfortable advocating for them. Every accountant and bookkeeper that they have on their staff, it's all freelance professional accounting, and you are 100% vetted before you can be hired by Paro. And then what Paro does is they match you up with an industry or a company that you have a history with. I had a lot of healthcare accounting before I found Meg. So that's kind of why they matched me with Meg. And then we had a Zoom call, and the rest is history. I've been with them for 2 years now. So,
and oh my God, poor Christa,
not letting her go.
Poor Christa. She comes in and she's thinking that we're some New York City kind of group because we're east of the Mississippi. And then she gets to meet my wife and myself, and my wife and myself could not be more polar opposite when it comes to managing finances and approaching like how I'm like, whatever, it'll all work itself out. We just do what we do. It'll all be fine. And Lisa's like clamping down. So anyways, so poor Christa's in the middle of that. And she's like, I really love Lisa. I understand what Brian has to do, but I really love Lisa. And I'm like, I get it, Christa. We do play you, back and forth. I will say this. A lot of startups will say this to us from time to time. Well, my accountant's going to do my books. I hired my accountant to do my books. I'm not a big fan of that. And I'll just give you my 2 cents on that. Your accountant is by nature conservative. Okay. There's not many accountants that have gone skydiving that I've met, or bungee cord jumping, or ATVing. It's not in their nature. So they're not the most promoted. You may think but it's not. So they're very much on controlling expenses, beware. So be a little leery about what you're doing when you're bringing that. I like your accountant and your family accountant. You probably love your accountant, for those of you watching, because they manage your taxes and they look out for your family and they look out for your well-being. And that's what your accountant should do. But when you're running a business, you're leveraging other people's money to make more money and to grow your business. So you need somebody who's pro-growth, right? So that's why Paro is really good. I think it's a great company, and we put our plug in for them. So by all means, do call them. We have a long history with them. And I actually sat down and showed them the financial plan that we use with our owners. So they're very adept at what we do. And I'll end with this. A lot of people are like, Brian, what do I outsource and what do I in-house, especially when I'm a startup? Well, here's the thing. You want to outsource the stuff that has nothing to do with physical therapy. Do not bring a lawyer in-house. Do not bring an accountant in-house. Do not bring a bookkeeper in-house. Do not bring your billers in-house. All of that stuff, billing, bookkeeping, accounting, credentialing, legal, that's all data entry. That has nothing to do with physical therapy. Push that stuff off, outsource it to where you need to be, so that all the rest of the time you have and mental attention units you have, you can devote on what? The three most important things: getting more new patients, improving and enhancing the existing staff you have, and giving back to your community and enriching your community. That's what a PT in private practice is supposed to be focusing on. How do I make a better, more rich community through my referral sources and my raw public? How do I improve the quality of life and experiences of my patients? And how do I professionally enhance the staff who I love and dear and I work with each and every day? And too many of my staff have seen me cry on staff meetings because I care so much about my staff and where we go as a group, because I feel they're part of our family in terms of that relationship. And that's what you should be doing as an owner. Do not get hung up on these data entry things. Let somebody else drive that cart.
Yeah.
Sorry,
focus more on company culture versus that.
I agree. Details. As a startup, I outsourced almost everything. I outsourced my billing. I outsourced my accounting, my bookkeeping, my legal, my social media marketing. And I know the new owners are probably like, where do you get the money to do it? You cannot grow your business and spend that kind of time that it takes to do all those things as well as they need to do it for your company to grow. You just have to bite the bullet and say, I am going to do this, and use those resources you just saved in time to grow the business to be able to afford it. It's really important.
That's a good point. You're kind of transitioning us nicely to the next kind of topic, which is financing, and is such a big question for startups, because that's really the thing that tends to hold people back from making that leap and saying, I want to go follow my dreams because I got this big obstacle of, not having the funds to do so. So can we transition and talk about, where do we get these funds from? And, Brian, maybe you can kick us off. The traditional route is obviously the SBA route.
Yeah, the SBA route. I think it's a 7A loan. You can go through the SBA. Now, here's my advice. When you go getting finance, all right. Most owners will call for a practice assessment, and I'm talking to them. They're like, we're ready to open up a practice. My wife and I have saved our money. I'm like, oh, really? How much money have you saved? We saved $40,000. I'm like, that's great, because I don't want you to spend any of that. And they're shocked when I say that. I say, I do not want you to take your hard-earned money out of your savings account and leverage that against opening up your business. Money is cheap today. Christa, money's cheap, right? Money is cheap. Yeah. So we want to leverage other people's money to build and grow and expand our business. Keep your money, your hard-earned, already taxed money in the account, right? I don't want to use your post-tax money to build your business. Let's use other people's money. So number one. Number two, where do I go? Do I go get a business loan? No, do not go get a business loan. That's going to be 7 to 11% in interest, and there's going to be terrible terms, and the bank's going to profit deeply off of you, and you're going to jump through a million hoops. So try to stay away from that. Now, if you have to, you have to, and maybe Kimberly will have a different experience and she'll talk about that. If you go SBA route, realize there are participating SBA lenders and there's certified SBA lenders. So certain SBA lenders that are certified have met higher regulations and jurisdiction. And so they do more SBA loans on a regular basis. And 70% of what they loan you is guaranteed to come back to them from the government should you fail. So they're really not risking that much. They're much more user friendly. Okay. Participating ones will put crazy things in on you. They'll ask you for ridiculous things. I had somebody from California tell me they had an SBA loan and the SBA company asked them for collateral. Like they had to put like X amount of money in a bond or something. Like I was like, what are you talking about? That is not at all what an SBA loan should be like. So you have to show that you have 20% of what you're borrowing typically. So if I want to borrow 100,000, the bank's going to give me 80 and I got to show them that I have 20. Well, that's what that 40,000 is when that owner tells me I have that in cash. I'm like, good, just keep that in cash. You don't have to use it. Then you use the SBA loan, right? So that's a really good way to go. Now, when you do apply for your SBA loan, here's a little tip for success here. Go through 2 or 3 banks. Don't go just with one bank. If you're going to do the process and you're going to gather all the information together, and you're going to show 3 years of tax returns and all this other stuff, then by all means, submit the same package to 2 or 3 banks. Get the ball going and let's see who comes back with the best terms and conditions and most reasonable answer for you. And also don't get discouraged if a bank turns you down. People get so defeated. Oh, I wasn't accepted. This isn't a frat house. This isn't a sorority. They don't not like you. They don't even know you. It's business. Certain banks are sitting on a lot of cash. They'll easily approve the SBA loans. Other banks have just recently extended money to like the Nicoles of the world. She just bought a mansion or whatever she got on her 5th car, and they don't have as much money in the bank. They just got cleaned out by the Nicoles. So they're not going to loan as readily. So don't take it personal. Go on to the next bank. And then of course, if SBA doesn't work, then you contact us, reach with us. We have PTs in different parts of the country that are more than happy to fund you, and they won't even ask for the money back. They'll take a small stake in your business, and then 5 years out, you can buy them out. So you can go that route, or I have some people that would actually privately fund you. Kimberly, you probably had some alternate financing such as that, similar to that?
I did, because the SBA, it basically, for if you're married, you have to, not only do you have to sign a personal, like your personal
guarantee.
Your personal guarantee, but your spouse does as well.
Yep.
And this business is completely mine apart from my spouse, so that wasn't an option for me. And they also wanted to use our house as collateral.
Yeah,
they absolutely would not do that.
Yep.
And so we could not go the SBA route. And so I got turned down a lot from a lot of different places, and I had credit at the top like 850. And let's
just stop right there and absorb that for a minute, right? So for all of you guys listening here, go to the SBA website for your state. There will be a representative number. Call them, talk to them, and they'll share with you like what Kimberly ran into in Pennsylvania that may or may not be the same things that you will be told. Like down here in Florida, it just boggles my mind because this is a federal program, but they don't give the same answers or require the same things depending on what state you're in. So don't get discouraged. But for Kimberly's sake, like when she pointed that out, if you're getting that kind of noise, I'd walk away from that too. This program is supposed to be for this purpose of starting businesses so I can employ people. Why are you making it so difficult? Why am I giving you my firstborn? What is going on? So Kimberly, well done for you, or Kim, well done for you for jumping out and being like, I'm out of here. I'm not, this is contrary to what this should be doing.
Yeah. So we checked into different alternative things and we did everything. So I basically contacted my where I have my investments, and I said, can I use some of my retirement account? And he said, absolutely. And it's a great plan because you're loaning money to yourself. You pay the interest back. So a huge chunk of my money came from my own retirement account. And then I got a separate loan that was for like just my brother co-signed it for me. I considered that my slush fund. And then I went to the equipment company that we were using as one that was recommended by you. And I said, hey, I'm having a little bit of problem financing. Can you finance this equipment for me? And they said, we don't finance, but we have a partner that does. And that was easy peasy. And so that all my equipment, everything got financed in the delivery. And then I had a lot of credit cards that, I've been very responsible. I have a huge amount of credit cards and we used them. And I know what you're saying about why pay that much interest, but I'm telling the new people, it doesn't matter the interest rate when you're making the money. Like you have nothing now, you have nothing now except your paycheck. who cares how much you're paying back in interest if you're getting a ton more money than you were? Like, it doesn't matter. Who cares?
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
People get too emotional about money. And that's one of the earliest things in the startup session, which is why, Nicole, you put this on. Number one, owner mindset. For those of you, write this down who are listening, do not be emotionally connected to green paper with dead presidents on it. Do not, because it's not going to serve you well. Use the money, leverage the money. And what's most important is that margin. Like Christa was touching on it when she was talking about payroll. And she will tell you, like, one of the things that we run our company very, very strictly on is what is our payroll as a percent of our monthly gross income. And Christa, what should we be striving for? And what should every private practice should be striving for? What's that number?
50%.
50%. You want to get your payroll
we say
down.
60%, but yes.
Yeah, well, 60% is like the quota, right? The ideal is 50, but we can talk to you if you're under 60, right?
Yeah.
You can be our friends if you're under 60.
Yes.
But if you're over, like when I took my business back, I bought it back for $1 and I took it back and I walked in, I ran my first payroll. My payroll was 83% of my monthly GI. There was no covering that. Making 13 cents on the dollar, there was way more expenses past the payroll at that point. So I knew quickly things had to change, right?
Yeah. And we have such a thin margin in this like physical therapy business to begin with. So you just have to be careful that you're not, and we have strategies to do that, like the pay for performance model where you can, work at, getting your payroll more under
the pay for performance model is a saving grace. And it's literally going to be the mainstay of how people are going to operate within the next 5 years for sure. But Kim mentioned perfectly, like I wish every owner listening right now, don't go in agreement with what you don't like. If you don't like it, and if you need reassurance, call myself or call Nicole or call anyone. We will coach you and say, don't do that. That is not, you're getting bad data. Let's keep going. Let's keep looking. Let's keep doing it. But most of all, I do not want you soaking all of your personal finances into this thing. You can leverage retirement's a great thing. What are you doing? It's sitting out there earning like 3-4%. You're going to be making 20% on that. I mean, that's a no brainer. That's a great thing for Kim to have shared.
Yeah, that's it. That's good advice. I really like that because it is a stumbling block for a lot of people. So you have to be resourceful and see what is, at your fingertips. What can you use? Because once you get it going, you mentioned a statement before we started, and I'd like you to revisit that. But you say sometimes that you walk out into your clinic. Tell us how you feel, like when you do see it kind of up and running.
Yeah, I was saying before I opened the clinic, I had this visualization of being able to walk in my clinic, walk in the front door, and the receptionist is happy. The patients are like talking to one another, and the staff's happy, and there's music, and people are just really having a great time. And sometimes I walk out into my clinic, and that's exactly what I see. And I just sit in the corner, and I want to cry. It's exactly what I wanted.
I think giving me goosebumps.
I'm just so incredibly grateful because we all know that there's more. And anybody who's looking into this program knew there's something more. I want more. And I mean, we're just at the very beginning, and I've got it. Like, we're definitely growing, and I'm not going to say it's easy. I work my butt off, but I always say my worst day here at my own clinic is better than like my best day anywhere I worked for anyone else. So.
You know what's really magical? I was just reading a book. I'm writing a book. I'm up here in New Jersey writing this book, working with Nicole. She's definitely, breaking my pencils and getting me to think, how to think differently. But I'll tell you this, in reading one of the books in preparation for my book, I was reading this concept, and Kim, I think everybody on this call can relate to this, that emotional health and emotional well-being is directly connected to motion. So when you think of a 6-year-old who's happy and joyous it's because they're moving all the time. They're running, jumping, playing, having a blast, out in Nicole's neighborhood, they're cow tipping, they're running around, they're doing whatever they're doing, right? But when you're 90 and you're barely moving, you're more rigid, you're less uptone, you're less happy. So I would direct this to you, Kim. I've often said to PTs who are listening right now, who are working a job, who are clinical directors, maybe they're regional manager, or maybe they're just a staff therapist out 2-3 years. And they're like, I'm definitely have more potential in my life. And I've heard you say this, Brian, the last word you want to see on your tombstone is the word potential, because there's no sentence that's going to make that look good. Right. So I have the potential to be an owner. So I've said this 1,000 times. A snapshot of you today as a PT working in a private practice and a snapshot of you 5 years from now is not going to change very much. I mean, the whole thing going on around you is pretty much going to be the same. But Kim, now that you've gone through it, if I took a picture of you as an employee working and I take a picture of you now, there's a lot more. Wouldn't you say those are like night and day, right?
Yeah, light year difference. And not only this, like the one thing I really appreciate about like what you guys are doing and what I've learned from you is, and why I wanted to go with you, that like this group in particular, is it's an expansion group. Like it's great where we are now, but the whole entire time, everything we've set up is the vision that this is just the first of many clinics. And so everything we think about doing, like financing or everything we've talked about, we think this has to be the foundation of for everything moving forward. So it's not just about like training an employer, you know, financing this one time. How is this going to impact us as we grow and add another clinic and another clinic? We're what, 9 months in, and I'm already looking for a space for another clinic.
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
That's
fantastic.
Awesome.
And you know, true to that form, Christa, you joined us how long ago?
2 years.
And have we grown and expanded since the day you walked in?
Oh, heavens, yes.
If you're not moving forward, you're either going backwards or standing still.
That's right. And that's why it's called MEG, you know, Management Expansion Group. And that goes back to my emotion correlation. That author, and I'll tell you who it came from. It came from Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins makes this point. It's emotions connected to emotion. And he could not, everything that comes out of his mouth, I think is right. I don't think I've ever disagreed with anything he's ever said. That is just what we're all about. You know, people will say when they do these Zoomcasts, like we're so enthusiastic, we're so energized. Well, would you want to be working with somebody who's not? I don't know. I don't know if I'd be like so gun ho to like, you know, so, but that's not just, I'm not trying to put a plug in for us. If you're going to go into private practice, it's like being a PT. When Nicole decided in grade school that she wanted to become a PT, she didn't just go out and start treating people. She had to invest in herself and go to a Ivy League school and get her PT degree. And then she came out as a competent therapist and she started treating. Same thing here. If you're going to bridge the gap between being a staff therapist and being an owner, you now have to put in some time and invest in some money in yourself and come out with your MBA or however you want to categorize, because that's all we focus on how to be a successful practice owner. If not with us and with some other group, please, by all means, if you take anything away from this call, this Zoomcast, do not go into it with mysteries and gaping holes of unknowingness. Christa will tell you, we are constantly, and she's like, the person who comes from the outside business world, work with all these different companies. She'll tell you this company's like, we are transparent 100%. We're like, if we don't know something, we're going to hunt that thing down and we will get to know it. And we're not afraid to skin our knees. I mean, Nicole's got Band-Aids on both of her knees for all the things that she's been doing lately. So we are not afraid to make a mistake. You should not be afraid to make a mistake. And I'll turn it back over to Nicole.
And I was going to say, you owe it not only to yourself to give yourself the training that you need, but you owe it to your team. Now you're responsible for an entire team of people and you have employees that are under your wing, and you owe it to them to get the proper training so that you're a raving success, you know, so you can help more people. So that's kind of my 2 cents. But I do want to kind of revisit some of these other stumbling blocks, because financing isn't the only one. I feel like the other stumbling block has to do with the location aspect of it and the lease. So we've had some people that have, you know, had build out issues, you know, things taking too long. Brian, can you touch on some of the more common issues that we see with the location? Yeah,
let's play a game with the remaining time that we have left. Let's do 10 questions in 10 minutes. All right. So let's do 10 questions in 10 minutes.
We only have 8 minutes.
All right. Let's do 8 questions in 8 minutes. Here we go. Let's get 8 riveting questions. So you're hitting me with what's the question you're throwing to me? And then you just go round robin and let's just hit it.
I love how you come up with these plans. Like,
let's do it.
Okay, we're gonna do the Brian show now, starting now.
No,
okay. Location issues.
Okay, so location issues.
Give me one most.
Okay, so here you go. Location issues. I've got 60 seconds. Watch your time. Here's the thing. Everybody got a pen and paper down. Here's what you want to do.
I don't have my watch on.
Yeah. Well, all right. Kim, they don't have time in Wisconsin. They're using like the sun or whatever they're using.
A minute.
All right. So location issues. Location issue number 1, make sure that you have the population density that's required. Ideally, you want 10,000 people per clinic per 30-minute drive, not miles. If you're in South Dakota, I'm telling that
5
means
hours is
nothing.
okay.
Okay. So you need to think, I'm going to put my clinic on South and Main, and I got to go out a 30-minute drive. How many people? 100,000 people. Great. How many clinics are in that 30-minute drive? Less than 10. Good. You got enough patient population density to do it. Now, if you're in rural America, you can go down as low as 5,000 per clinic if you're in rural America, because you're going to slow it down, see them longer, care for them more. Number 2, look for good ingress, egress. Do not be on a one-way street. Do not have to have people do a U-turn to come in. Make sure that you're at an intersection or a light. Make it easy to come in. Make sure that you have parking, 4 spaces per 1,000 square feet that your space that you're leasing. If I'm leasing a 2,000 square foot office, I should have 8 spaces. Is my time up?
Okay. No, yes, because you sound like the Motorola guy. Like, slow it down.
And last thing I would do is I would definitely go through a letter of intent for any space you want, negotiate it exactly the way you want it, and make sure that when you get to the lease part, you want to put 2 things out there. Number 1, you want to have an escape clause in your lease. If my build out does not happen in the time frame that I need it done or whatever, I can walk away from this thing. I'm not going to be on the hook for it. Number 1. Number 2, when you hire a contractor, you set time frames in which this contractor is going to get X amount of work done. Drywall inspection is going to be done by May 30th. Final inspection is going to be done by this time. And I'm going to get my C of O, my certificate of occupancy. You can't do anything in that space without a C of O. If my C of O doesn't come in within, 90 days of the start of this thing, I walk away and I owe you nothing. So, that's very important.
And we had Kathy made a good comment in the chat saying that parking was a big issue, and you do have to have that on your radar too.
Definitely.
So you have to have go ahead.
Oh, one last thing.
He's so excited.
When you look, because people don't do this. This is like a diamond.
In New Jersey by his folks.
I've been by myself for a long time, so this is a fierce human contact I've had in forever. I called Nicole just 2 days ago just to talk to her.
Oh my goodness.
When you find a space and you actually like it, and it has good ingress, egress, good intersection, just go drive there at 8 o'clock in the morning traffic hour, and drive there and go in and out of there at 4 p.m. when everyone's leaving, 5 p.m. If you don't visit your place, your potential place at those times, you have no idea. You could see a parking lot out in front on the road, and you didn't even know that happened. A lot of realtors will show you spaces at 2 in the afternoon. Well, nobody's on the road at 2 in the afternoon. So check that out during rush hour.
I'm going to shift gears just so we can get Brian to be quiet for a second.
Yeah, I'll mute.
Christa. What should we expect? And this is from Santiago. What should we hold the bookkeeper accountable to? What should we expect from outsourcing a bookkeeper or hiring a bookkeeper in-house?
Well, if you outsource, that's all laid out with the company that you outsource through. You give them deadlines, what's expected of them, all of that. So that's taken care of with the outsource company. If you hire somebody in-house, you definitely want to make sure they have some sort of a bookkeeping accounting background. If I had $1 for every time I worked with somebody that said, oh, I'll just have my sister who's a stay-at-home mom do my books for me. No, you have to know what you're doing, or your financial statements are going to be a mess.
Yeah.
Trust me on that one. They have to have some sort of a background, but there needs to be deadlines. I try and produce financial statements for the prior month for Brian and Lisa by the 5th of the following month. Make sure your bills are paid on time. Make sure that all of your accounts receivable is collected, all of those kinds of things. You need to give that staff deadlines so they fully are aware when they take that position, what is expected of them.
Yeah. And just as a resource, because Santiago, I know you're a client too, but going into the file vault and getting the organization chart that we have it all mapped out, all of those kind of doingness things are listed on there too. So you should be able to see, what all those are as well as a resource. But yeah, that's good insight, Christa. And just knowing enough about it to hold the bookkeeper accountable is important.
I've got 2 tips for that. One, let your bookkeeper report to you every single month about the status of the company, based on the income. But you don't know the reports like she does. So have he or she report to you, number 1. And number 2, if you have a really, really good bookkeeper, they should get to the point where they can actually know your business well enough to do cash flow projections. When you have somebody who can run cash flow projections and give you certainty about what's coming in the future, now you're in the top 5-10% of financial know-with-all, because you not only know what's going on now, you know what's going to be going on. And that's really, to me, when I see I have a bookkeeper who can give me some degree of accuracy on projecting out what's happening, I am extremely happy.
Yeah. We had
I'm sorry, I have a cash flow like template too, that if you're interested in getting, I'll have Matt load that up too with that income statement and balance sheet.
Wow, that's great.
Man, this is going to be a good Zoomcast.
Fantastic.
So Kathy made a comment and said permitting, if that was a process that slowed things down, getting permits, and any insight on that you might have.
Well, the contractor needs to account for that, right? I mean, they need to be like, you're hiring them for that degree of expertise. They can't use that as a justification. They should know their county courthouse. They should know their city permitting office. There is no, I am so sick and tired of hearing like, I can't even get my hint water shipped to my house because of COVID. Give me a break. You can't let people keep throwing COVID as an excuse for why things aren't happening. So get with that contractor and say, look, I'm going off of your deadlines. I'm going off of your things. There shouldn't be any crazy 8 balls, right? And let's say you want to protect your interests. You'll say, okay, good. If there is permitting issues or stops, then everybody's going to wear that condition. Everybody's going to suffer that. So the landlord's going to have to wait. The contractor's going to have to wait because you're waiting. So just don't let you be the one hanging out to dry if permitting gets held up. Let's put that as a contingency. If permitting delays us by 30 days, guess what? I occupy 30 days later. Guess what? My abated rent gets extended 30 days. Think ahead if you're really concerned about that. But honestly, I expect the contractor to know what's going on in that county.
And the one thing I did, I'm sorry, the one thing I did in my lease is I put that we didn't start paying the rental until the certificate of occupancy was signed.
Yes.
And that we did have delays and I didn't have to start paying. So I know like people are like, how did you do that? You can negotiate anything in a lease and you better get used to negotiating now.
Especially right now. I mean, with the market the way it is, especially that you're a healthcare person, you think you need them more than they need you. Trust me, they need you more than you need them.
Yeah. Just one more question we're going to take, and then we'll kind of sign off with just some closing thoughts. But Sam wanted to know, how do you negotiate with insurance? Do you process for application for Medicare insurance and all? I'm not sure.
With Medicare, you're not negotiating, right? You're going to go on to the Medicare calculator. You're going to figure out your zip code. You're going to put it in. You're going to run 5 or 10 of your typical treatments. You're going to know what Medicare is going to pay you. You're going to go ahead and send in get your fee schedule. You double check that. You're fine. With your other contracts, when it goes in, you're going to get a fee schedule only after you get approved for contracting. So you can't negotiate in the beginning. You just get in. Once you get in, then you get the fee schedule. They won't even give you the fee schedule till they get you in. So you don't have a shot at it. Once you get in, you're like, what's this? $17 a visit. I can't, now you got to go to bat and be like, okay, fight that. Now, if you're going to fight that, you fight that with the insurance company. Of course, you can't go talk to other providers in town because that's called collusion and you'll go to jail and you'll be orange and black. And we're all afraid of orange and black. So you don't want to be doing that. So you want to call us. Right? Because we're a nationally known consultant. We don't have a private practice. We are not subject to collusionary things. We can advise you. We can't disclose other clinics' names or other people and stuff, but we kind of know what the reimbursement is in different parts of the country and what those insurance companies ought to be paying. So we can kind of coach you by saying, hey, that sounds a little low to us. You should really go to bat for, $10 more, $8 more. And then you go with that rep and you try to argue that. Listen to the podcast. I talked about where their position is so you can counter it. If that fails, I've got 2 fail safes. Number 1, provide a service that nobody else within 5 miles of you is providing. Speech therapy, OT, aquatic therapy, something like that, pediatric therapy that nobody else is providing. They can't accept premiums for a service that they don't have a provider for when you're a willing provider. So leverage that to get the rates that you ought to get.
And that's where a contractor might come in handy to bring a contractor on who just does peds if you don't happen to do peds.
That's when you can 1099 somebody because that could be a good fit for a contractor. And then number 2, every single state, your congressman or woman or your senator has a health department committee, and they have legislative aides that work that committee. Call that legislator, whether it be your congressman or senator, get to that healthcare committee, form a relationship. Believe me, they do want to get to know you because you're a constituent, and they can put pressure on certain panels of certain insurance companies to get them to take a look at you and say, hey, look, we're letting you to provide, you're providing, Cigna, you're providing healthcare in the state and in our jurisdiction, and yet you're excluding this provider, or you're denying this provider adequate reimbursement, go there. And then number 3, the APTA state chapter. So that's where I would go. Try to get allies. So tap us, tap your legislator, tap your state APTA.
Yeah, that's good advice, Fran. And I know we're going a little long, but again, I told you, we love the startup and we love to help support our startups. And we really kind of dived in and talked a lot about finance this time, but I'm seeing a part 2 of this whole series, with kind of taking a different spin, a different angle. So I first want to just get some closing thoughts, minute or less. Kim, if you have any closing thoughts to share, we'd love to hear from you first.
I just say to anybody who's thinking of doing this, or if you just started your business, get a strong foundation. I felt like Meg gave me a strong foundation, and everything as long as you do everything from the base up very strong and put people in your life who aren't just I said, I met a lot of charlatans along the way. Put people in your path that really know what they're doing and do it well, and don't feel badly about spending the money. Just spend it, because it's a very strong foundation, and everything you do comes after that. It has to be built on that foundation. So make it strong, choose wisely, and the details will work itself out if you have the right foundation.
Very good advice. Okay, Christa, do you have any closing thoughts?
No,
you scared me.
Yeah, it's just not a thought in the noggin. Nothing kicking around.
We said it all.
You said it all. Yeah, just know the basics of your financial statement. Know what you own, what you owe, and how much money you're bringing in every month. I was going to touch on something Kim mentioned earlier about outsourcing versus hiring. You're spending the money anyway. So why not let somebody else have the headache of making sure that you have a qualified accountant or bookkeeper on staff, and they're just going to do your stuff for you. You don't want to be involved in that HR process for that role. Get somebody that knows what they're doing, that you can trust, and move forward.
And, to that point, Christa, I think it's obvious for most people right now that the do-it-yourselfer attitude in business never pans out. It never does. When you're in there changing the light bulb and changing the toilet paper roll holder, I'm like, what are you doing? You're the owner of this business. There are bigger things that you should be frying in your mind. Christa is absolutely right. Abandon that do-it-yourselfer attitude and going cheap. Invest in yourself.
Is that your advice? Are you done?
No, my advice is I've got. Well, first I got one. I got one question, and then
I got 10 things.
Yeah. I hope everybody can appreciate the enthusiasm of our Zoomcast. We do not want to be the stuffy conservative one. So I hope you do appreciate the craziness. I have one question for Christa. Christa, am I correct in, if I open my business, I would say 99% of all the businesses I see are running QuickBooks. Okay. They buy QuickBooks. So, Peachtree is out there. I get it. But most people are doing QuickBooks. So I load up QuickBooks. I get QuickBooks. I go QuickBooks Online, whatever I do. One of the things that we have in Meg Academy's File Vault is a standardized physical therapy ledger. Isn't that the most important piece to get you up and running financially in QuickBooks, is to appropriately set up your book of accounts in your ledger? Because the income and expense reports, the P&Ls, the balance sheets pull data from the ledger, right? So I didn't want to give people this impression I got to set up all these reports. It really does pull from the ledger. So you just really have to set up. That's why we have the ledger already defined and already broken. Am I correct in that?
Yes. One thing to add to that is, for example, with QuickBooks, which is a very widely used accounting software. Right. It's very good. It will handle your payroll eventually. There's many, many things. There's several levels to it. There's an introductory package. And then, like I said, you can get the subscription that it will even file all of your payroll returns and all of that for you once you get established and grown and all of those things.
Got it.
That being said, when you start with QuickBooks and really any other accounting software I've used, they have a general chart of accounts, right? And you literally say, okay, my business name, Meg Business. Do I have cash? Yes. Check the box. Do I have accounts receivable? Yes. Check the box.
Oh, wow.
And it sets up your chart of accounts.
I didn't know.
Add to it as you want.
Wow.
There is just a general marketing expense in QuickBooks. Now, if you want that to be split out between social media or, print, if anybody even does that anymore, all of that stuff, you can make it as detailed as you want, but any accounting software will come with a general chart of accounts.
Okay. Okay, good. Even easier than when I did. All right.
Easy
good.
peasy. Yeah. So don't be intimidated, guys.
Yeah. Don't be intimidated. Yeah.
Were you done with your word of advice, or?
No, I didn't even give my word of advice.
Holy cow. Guys, I hope you have a couple more hours left in your afternoon.
Oh my gosh. My word of advice is only have one Nicole in your life, because it's about all your body's going to take.
That's enough.
Here's my word of advice. And it's very straightforward. Know the difference between your values and your priorities. And what do I mean by that? Your values never change. Your values should never change. Your values should stay with you for the eternity of your life and all of your lives, if you believe in that. Your values are your values, and they don't waver. They're not compromisable. So when you go into practice, and like Kim was saying, find somebody that you know, like, and trust. Find somebody who's transparent with you. Find somebody, and I'm not saying they're perfect. Boy, when I went through my back surgery and I was like all up and down and crazy, I was not myself. I made mistakes. But the people who liked and loved me forgave me for those mistakes, because, you're going through something. Everyone will. But everyone knows, no matter what you're going through, my values never changed. What's important to me never changes. But the priorities may. Your priorities may rotate as things go on. You may have a priority to devote a lot of time and attention to marketing at one particular point in time. Maybe it may be to hiring at another point in time. Maybe it's like, I have to really cover these vacations because I got to let my staff get a break and go off. And that's my priority right now. My priority is not moving on this, that's okay. And I'm here just to give you a green star, big smiley face, give you permission to, forget or turn a blind eye to some things at certain points in your business cycle, certain points of your life cycle, right? To be able to adhere to your values, and I just can't communicate that, I think, as well as I would like to right now, other than for you to hopefully just think about that for a minute. Know what your values are for all of your dynamics, yourself, your family, your friends, your community, your group, your work group. Know what those values are, and then know how you are going to make your list of priorities. I literally prioritize what's really important to me, literally on a weekly basis. I really do rotate that from time to time, because that is made to shift so that you can accomplish your goals. That's my advice. Don't be hard on yourself. Stick to your values, evaluate your priorities, and stay consistent with that.
I think that's very well said. And Brian, I have my last little word of advice, and it's going to be very short and sweet.
Okay.
But I do think I'm sure we have a lot of people that are on the fence. Like, do I do this? Do I not do this? When do I do it? What, is the timing going to be right? And I think it's just like,
hang on, let me get ready, Nicole. Hang on, here it comes. Okay, I'm ready. Go ahead. All right, go. Go for it.
My advice is so bright, you got to put on shades.
You're just throwing so much light at me. You totally picked up what I was throwing down. Go for it. I'm ready.
My advice is do it. If you are on the fence, do it. I have not met one owner who was like, oh my gosh, I so regret doing this. Like, I so regret, starting my own business. Have you? I don't know. I haven't I haven't come across anyone who's regretted the decision. So if you are thinking about it, if you have that kind of fire inside, just take the steps and at least start researching it and learning about what you might need to do and if it's going to be a good fit for you. Because, again, I just think most people don't have the regret of not doing or of doing it. They would be more of not doing it. That's it. Oh my gosh.
Absolutely.
I can't. I'm gonna just put my hand over on this side.
Oh, come on. It's not that bad. It's all good, man. It's all good. We're all everything you're throwing is good. It's good information.
You slap happy, folks.
Oh, that's right.
Go write your book.
We'll put you guys in Nicole mood. We'll put you in Nicole mood. There you go. I got that. Go for it, Nicole. I put it, where did I go?
We're going to sign off today. I want to thank our panelists. Christa, you have been an amazing wealth of information. Kim, I can't thank you enough for sharing your story and your experiences. I think you've been super enlightening to all of our audience. And of course, Brian, you've brought the humor along with all of that knowledge.
If you don't love what you're doing, then what are you doing, right? Yeah. You have to have, you've heard me say this word before, and I'll end off with this: insouciant. Whatever you do, be insouciant. Go after it with the spirit of play of a 6-year-old. I mean, I must drive my staff crazy, but I'll tell you what, it's never a boring moment. And that's the kind of practice.
How do we mute the 6-year-old? Because he's always got to have the last word. All right, everybody. Oh no, he's muted. Yes. Bye, everybody. Thank you for joining.
Bye, guys.